This is Jim Mulhern at the Plymouth Gym on socials, and I thank you. This show's an escape from work and business and politics. We talk humor and music to artists and writers and creatives and broadcasters, talented people who impact us, and we get a few things out of the way first. Then we talk to our great guest. We play Thank You, No Thank You toward the end, and at the end, we handle the necessary disclaimers, and then we end the frivolity. So on today's show, the great singer and drummer of the legendary Los Straightjackets, Chris Sprague, is with us. And I'm going to give Chris a proper intro after getting some things out of the way and doing a plug. It's been quite a hell of a couple weeks, and there are far too many things to get out of the way. So I'm going to get out of my own way, get out of your way, and get the hell on with the show. I'm glad that I got that out of the way. But first, as always, we have to do a plug, and I will read it thusly. So, And I Thank You show is brought to you this week by Dynamic Wine Coolers. Well, fall is here, and if you can read a calendar, you know it's November. And if you're like me, you can look on your neighbor's porch, and there's a sign that says it's wine o'clock. And if you're like that homeowner, you've got a busy day ahead of you, of online shopping, of taking the GMC Yukon through the car wash twice. Things are busy, but you need refreshment. And like God and guns, it's your right to high volume, low tannin adult refreshment. And this is where Dynamic Wine Coolers comes in. Yes, you heard me right. Dynamic Wine Coolers of Superior Township is calling your name, Karen. Dynamic heard you loud and clear that High Noons and White Claws and Trulies, they weren't getting the job done. You needed something that was less challenging, that you could fill your hydro flask with, and something that you could straw sip away in the day and well into the night. Well, they're here for you. Dynamic produces 3 delicious flavors: Chuggy Cherry, Daft Raspberry, and Empty Blonde. Nearly natural flavors mixed with Kirkland-like vodka and a splash of something not unlike soda water, make for a drink for easy times and uncritical thinking. Perfect for pool parties, tailgates, and book clubs not involving books. Dynamic Wine Coolers are your go-to cocktail. But don't listen to me. Listen to the founder of Dynamic, Chuck Swill, who says, this is not your grandmother's Zima. And I add that Bartles and James, were they not dead and fictional, would be green with jealousy about this fine product. So go out and get your 4-pack. It's in the hot pink leopard print packaging with these reminders. 1, Dynamic Wine Coolers should not take the place of water. Dynamic Wine Coolers are made in a factory that processes nuts, corn nuts. Dynamic Wine Coolers' nicotine-like energy should not mask the fact that Dynamic Wine Coolers contain nicotine. Dynamic Wine Coolers cannot guarantee that you won't trip over a lit solo stove. Should your wine cooler joy last longer than 18 hours, please consult a bed. Dynamic Wine Coolers can be found at select grocers, Speedway gas stations, and online direct at dynamicwineladies.net. And finally, Dynamic Wine Coolers is a proud division of Dynamic Industries. Say what you will, it's dynamic. And I thank you. Now, on to the show. Chris, thanks for sitting through all of that.
You know what? You had my attention at Empty Blondes.
Oh, so, awesome.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Who hasn't had an empty blonde or two?
I can't comment, although I probably could comment.
Oh, I'm sure you could.
I'm not going to.
No, I will, but go ahead.
But so my guest today is Chris Sprague. And Chris is a multi-instrumentalist, guitarist, and singer. And behind the Mexican wrestler's mask, easy for me to say, Mexican wrestler's mask, the Lucha LIbre, Chris is the great drummer and great singer for the incomparable Los Straightjackets. And just for those unfamiliar, Los Straightjackets are a crack instrumental band, guitar band, but much more. with 20 plus albums recorded.
Yeah,
Yep. According to legend, they're Conan O'Brien's favorite band and
very
have played
true.
live on his NBC and Turner shows. For the last many years, they've been Nick
13
Lowe's
times,
band.
by the way.
What's
13
that?
times on Conan O'Brien.
Say that again, Chris.
13 times on Conan O'Brien.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. But for the last many years, like I said, you've been Nick Lowe's band, and you're currently touring
Yeah.
with Nick in support of an album they recorded together entitled
Right.
Indoor Safari, which is awesome. And if you know Nick Lowe, you know greatness. And if you've seen Los Straightjackets, especially live, you've seen greatness. And Chris is the drummer and the main vocalist of the band, and you'll hear his sweet harmony vocals behind Nick Lowe's singing. And what a great treat it is to hear such a tight crack band playing Nick Lowe's hits and your own instrumentals, and so many great instrumental cover songs, as I just did, as we were talking about it, as you swung through Detroit area at a sold out Magic Bag in fashionable Ferndale. So it's my pleasure to welcome Gringo Starr.
Well, thank you, sir.
Chris Sprague.
What an introduction. How do I live up to that? It's pretty amazing.
People have to know. They just need to know. And so, man, I left your show blown away again by how good you guys are, how great you guys are. And clearly I'm a big fan. And I just saw that the tour is continuing across the states, and you guys are going into 2025 into Europe, which is great. So how's the tour going?
It's been going fantastic since the record came out. Like you said, we did our first leg last month across the East Coast, ended up in the Midwest. We finished in Minneapolis. Amazing. We're going to do a handful of shows in Texas in December, and then we're going to cross the pond and do, I think, about 6 or 7 shows in the UK. And then we're going to pick up on the West Coast, starting in Los Angeles at the Troubadour, which incidentally enough was my first show as a musician. I played the Troubadour with my oldest brother's band when I was 13. So I'm going to return after 43 years of playing the Troubadour. Not to give away my age or anything. I'm 112. Don't I look right?
Well, you're holding up. You're holding
I'm
up
holding
great.
up pretty well. Absolutely. But it's going fantastic. 2025 is looking really good for us. Even talks of 2026. So, we've been playing with Nick for almost 10 years now. This winter will be 10 years in December, I believe. What a match made in heaven, at least for us,
Let's talk about that a little bit, because I got my first live exposure to you guys at the Yep Rocks anniversary show in North Carolina. We talked about it a little bit.
Yeah. Was that the 15th anniversary?
Yep.
Okay.
Wow. And you guys played your own set, and I think you backed up Nick, did you not?
We did, and along with a few other people on Yep Rock, like Chuck Prophet and Eileen Jewell. But yeah, it was one of those things where we did our own show, and we were assigned to back up, I think, 3 or 4 artists. Nick was one of those where we do 4 or 5 songs with him.
Okay.
And man, it was magic immediately. We all knew it once we started playing with him, how good it really was,
How do you, Chris? How do you when you do that? So you're set up to play with them, and you got to woodshed it a little bit, right? You've got to
Yeah.
So when you meet somebody like that, well, first of all, never meet your heroes, they say, but talk about meeting him, and talk about what it was like first playing those songs. What does it feel like to tune up and start to take a crack at all those?
It was fantastic. Nick is a true gentleman. He's an English gentleman. He's probably the highest music IQ person I've ever met. Obviously amazing songwriter, musician. But it was one of those things where when we started playing with him, everything just fell in place. We all have the same musical tastes. It was just very natural. And my musical background, I probably backed up 30 old timers on drums, and you have great experiences. You've had, people with egos, people that doesn't live up to their name anymore. They probably should have retired. Nick is a dream, you know. He was perfect.
Who are some of these old timers? Just curiously.
James Burton,
Okay.
Milky Edwards, Joyne Eddy, doo-wop sensations like the Cadillacs, the Bobettes.
Okay.
It goes on. I mean, I'm terrible with naming names off the spot, but over my years of playing drums, mainly with Deke Dickerson, who is an amazing guitar player, who I had the pleasure of playing drums for over 20 years and still do on occasion. We got to back up some amazing people. And Nick's one of those guys that it just fell right into place. And Joyne Eddy was one of those people too, where you do a rehearsal and it's like, all right, we're going to play this song. Okay. Yep. You got it. Next one. Next.
Wow.
Next. No problem. You got it. You got it. You're good. And it sounds like the record. And Nick's one of those guys.
Did you ever play with Johnny Rivers?
No, I never got to play with Johnny Rivers. I wish I could have, but yeah. I'm a big fan.
So many Straightjacket songs, and I want to hear you guys play Secret Agent Man. You know, just
you
have to trot it out.
That would have been great. We would have been a really good band with him, but yeah, it never happened, unfortunately.
I want to talk to you back to that that Yep Rock anniversary show. And when I went out, that was I knew of Robin Hitchcock and Chuck Prophet. I'd heard of Sloan. One of the bands there that I was not familiar with, but when I saw them play, was Fountains of Wayne.
Are
you familiar with them?
A little bit, just a little bit.
Not related to anything. What a live band!
Yeah,
I was blown away by them, and they're one of their members passed early COVID, Adam Schlesinger, and but apropos of nothing, that was I was blown away by you guys, by Nick and Fountains of Wayne. I mean that looked like a 70s rock and roll band that was at the top of their game when we saw them 10 years ago. Yeah. So hey, I want to ask a couple things. So you also backed Marshall Crenshaw, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How did that happen?
Well, basically Marshall lives in the Woodstock area, which Los Straightjackets manager lives. And just recently, Yep Rock reissued his first two albums, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But basically, at that time, we were just starting the tour with Nick, and our manager approached Marshall like, "Hey, I got this band who's been backing up Nick Lowe. Would you be interested in doing a tour or two?" And he said, "Yeah," and we did it. It was really nice. Marshall is an amazing songwriter, great performer. So that was a really good experience as well.
Yeah, he's awesome. And when I see you back up Nick, and when I see you back up him, these are guys who don't write simple songs.
Yeah,
and they are consummate singers as well.
Yeah,
and Marshall, quite a guitar player in his own right. And it's one of those things where you hear a great band, and the music is the song is so great. It's like Beatles. It was everybody goes back to Beatles, right? But it sounds so simple, but it's so complex, right? And perfectly played, And when I see you guys back up Nick, when I see you back up Marshall, backing vocals, everybody's a guitar player. You would have three really good guitar players in that lineup backing up Marshall and Nick, but Nick is mainly playing acoustic in your shows. That could all get lost and get really busy, but the sound is so good when you back them up.
Yeah.
You're the consummate backing band. And I don't know if that clearly it has to do with your playing, but it also has to do with a good mix and good sound people.
Yeah, absolutely. With Nick, we've had the same sound man. We started out with Nick's producer, Neil Broadbank, who did a few tours with us, but sadly he passed away. His protege, who was doing monitors at the time, Tuck Nelson, took over as the head of house. And, young guy. When I met him, he was, I want to say 23, 24.
Okay.
But he's been our sound person for, I want to say, at least 7 years.
Okay.
and he's killing it. I think he's 34 now. Young guy going
Yeah.
to these venues with 8,000 people, just crushing it. He has the right idea, just like we do with Nick, where we're all on the same level. We know how things should sound.
Sure.
We don't want the drums to sound like a heavy metal drum kit with the loudest thing is the bass drum.
Right.
We want, like a jazz drum sound. We don't want it bass heavy. We want everything crystal clear. The guitars do the talking with us. Nick does the singing with us, and everything is crystal clear with Tuck. So it's not just the band, it's also the sound crew as well. So hats off to Tuck Nelson.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
To that, in your band, so Eddie and Greg are the guitarists.
Yes.
Pete's the bassist.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a lead guitar player in Los Straightjackets?
They're both lead, and they're
That's
both.
what I figured.
There's neither one of them are selfish, which is a huge benefit for anybody who's been in a band with two guitar players. It's pretty amazing. In the Ventures, there was one assigned lead guitar player and there's one assigned rhythm guitar player. With us, it trades off. And both of them are fantastic and different in their own ways.
It's so complimentary and sounds so seamless. You guys are clearly practice.
Well, chemistry. You can be the greatest musician in the world, just like you can be the greatest basketball player in the world, and you can have an all-star team, and it's terrible.
Yeah,
I think it's all chemistry. It's like get back to the Beatles, or even the Who, where you have four guys who could not play in another band because they all play lead, including the bass player in the Who.
Yep.
But you put those four guys together, and it's the Who. You put the Beatles together, and it's John, Paul, George, and Ringo. It's the Beatles. Not that we're the Beatles. I'm just saying that the chemistry of the band is very important. Even with Nick, when you include Nick into Los Straightjackets, that could have been a disaster, and it wasn't. The chemistry's just right.
I want to ask you about that. His studio albums are produced the way he wants to produce them, and typically he's producing them, doing his own vocals and then his own harmony vocals, at least in the past, right? And so, but you're such a good singer and such a great harmony vocalist to him. I'm sorry, I'm lathering you up, but we listen for these things, right? And that's so important. When you get together and you're working on these songs, how much of a taskmaster is he, or is he just easy, like you said, with getting the harmonies just right?
He's disguisingly easy, but he is a producer at heart. I mean, keep in mind, he produced The Dam and Elvis Costello and many other bands.
Sure.
But he's also very easygoing. And live, I mean, I pretty much have given, carte blanche on singing what I want to sing.
Okay.
He trusts my taste, and I don't overdo it. I'll do ghost vocals, or I'll do a harmony here and there.
Yep.
And same with recording. He'll have suggestions on way to sing some things, and I'll come up with parts. But it's great. When it's easy, it's easy. When it flows natural, it flows natural. And that's the way it is with this band.
Is there coming up, like I did my research on you and a lot of your influences, we see that from some of your other bands. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Sure.
But who are some of the drummers that you admire?
Oh, geez.
Or maybe one or a couple that you tried to emulate coming up.
Well, it your taste changed through the years, but it all kind of circles back. I think obviously number one would be Ringo Starr. I think he's, he might not be the technically best drummer that ever lived. That would probably be Buddy Rich, but honestly, I'm not a fan of Buddy Rich.
Right. He
plays way too much for me. I love Ringo Starr. I love Gene Krupa. I think he's probably the best drummer ever. Like there was a saying, if you put 10 drummers on stage with Gene Krupa, all eyes would turn to Gene Krupa.
Interesting.
Yeah. And if I ever need any kind of inspiration, I always go back to a YouTube video of Gene Krupa on the Ed Sullivan Show doing Sing Sing, and it's like a jazz trio or quartet, and it's probably late 50s, early 60s. He's a little older, but let me tell you, I've never heard anybody play drums better than that. Just the dynamics, everything is perfect. Other jazz drummers, Joe Morello, of course. The Ventures drummer, Howie Johnson, Mel Taylor. There's a couple different drummers, both I really love. The drummer from Bill Hay and the Comets, Dick Richards, was a big influence on me with rim shots. Which any drummers that ever seen me play, there's plenty of rim shots going on.
Sure.
Yeah, those are my main influences, I would say. I wasn't a big John Bonham fan. I know he's fantastic and all. I loved Earl Palmer in the 50s, great studio drummer. Hal Blaine, of course. Buddy Harmon, another Nashville studio drummer. Yeah, those are mainly my influences. I'm not a big heavy hitter or was a big fan of that, or
Did you ever follow any of the sorry Chris,
no.
Did you ever follow any of the funky drummers?
I like Bernard Purdie.
I was just going to ask you about Bernie Purdie.
Yeah, I love Bernard Purdie. I think he's up there now. Like you always discover new things as you go through life. Music, it's endless for what you discover. And I'm a huge Bernard Purdie fan, and I'm also a big Sandy Nelson fan, who also did drum records, featuring him. As a matter of fact, I've been toying with the idea in the last couple of years of doing Chris Sprague or Gringo Starr record that features the drums, like a Sandy Nelson or Bernard Purdie record. That would be instrumentals of rock and roll stuff or jazz stuff that I would think would be a record you could put on at a cocktail party and have it playing in the background.
Wow.
So that Bernard Purdie, Sandy Nelson, you get those guys, on drums, you can't help but dance. And that's what I love.
I'm thinking about, and I'm drawing a blank on his name, James Brown's drummer.
Oh, yes. Same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing. Another amazing drummer.
Yeah. So many of them. One of the guys because I like how you drum and I like your tasteful use of fills, and I think about guys, current guys, and when I say current, I say I'm saying really came up through 70s, 80s, are current. Yeah. Guys like Clem Burke from Blondie. And,
he's a machine.
And Max Weinberg, guys who can play lots of different styles, songs, know where it sits, know how to stay in the pocket,
right?
But can show off when they need to too,
Well, to me, it all goes back to you play for the song.
Yeah,
you don't play for the drum fill. Ringo was a perfect example of that. You play for the song, what fits. And it's funny, when I joined Los Straightjackets, there's the previous drummers that did so many drum fills here and there, and I'm just I don't like drum solos.
Yeah,
maybe the first one to admit it. I don't like sound checking drums. I think they're obnoxious. But once you get a band involved, I love it, and I love doing a drum solo on Sing Sing with the Straightjackets or doing this and that. But I think it's because I probably started on guitar when I was young.
Yeah.
And I've learned to appreciate every instrument, that I don't care a rat's about doing a 6-minute drum solo. I'd rather do 30 seconds and make it count when it needs to happen, play it stupid on other parts. Because it's all, you're a band. You're not a solo artist. I'm not up there and doing a drum clinic. I'm up there with the band, with 2 guitar players, a bass player, sometimes with Nick with acoustic guitar. I'm there to support, and I'm there to fill a hole. And that's the way I think about it. I
totally agree with you. And I think we've all, as music fans, been to those shows where the drum solo was just,
there's only one thing worse than a drum solo, and that's a bass solo.
As a bass solo. Yes, exactly. You just reminded me, this had to be back late 80s. John Mellencamp, John Cougar, when he was out, and this was in his heyday, right? So he was touring those big albums, and his drummer, Kenny Aronoff, who you know of probably.
Yep.
It was the coolest thing ever because I don't think he did a drum solo during the show. In fact, I know he didn't
Right.
because I don't think John would have put up with it. But
You're right.
at the start of the show, you know how they have the walk-up music going on before the show starts. And they had some they segued into some really funky music with a great bottom.
Right.
And it was really fun. And then all of a sudden, you know, house lights hadn't gone down, you know, stage lights hadn't come up. And all of a sudden, Kenny's behind the kit playing to the beat of this funky drum beat. And then the band walks out and they start just playing to this song. And then they went into it. It was the coolest thing that just said, wow, this guy is great.
You know,
no drum solos, but he's got the funk.
It's funny you should say that because when I was 13, I'm 56. I was born in 68. So when I was 12 and 13, New Wave happened.
Oh, yeah.
And I grew up when I was 8 years old. For Christmas, my mother got me every Capitol Beatle record for Christmas. And I had a record player. I was like overwhelmed. And I'm like trying to figure out what came first. I would look at the back of the album. It's like, oh, all right, Meet the Beatles is first, Beatles second album, Hard As whatever. So that was my favorite music. And then when New Wave happened, the Knack came out, which was like, to me, was the next Beatles. And then the B-52s, another great 60s kind of band. And the band The Police, which I loved. And I loved Stuart Copeland's drumming. I thought it was very melodic at the time. And one of the early shows, the first show I actually saw was Paul McCartney and Wings in 76 when I was 8 years old at the Seattle Kingdom, which was blow your mind.
Wow.
But in 80, I want to say 82, 83, there was a festival in California called the S Festival.
I remember.
And it was 3 days.
Yep.
And the first day, which is the main day that my brother and I, Frank, went to, was because of the New Wave Day, which was, and I still remember the band order.
I know who you're going to say. Go ahead.
Gang of Four was first.
Yep.
The Ramones, Oingo Boingo. I know I'm saying that wrong, but I say it Oingo Boingo. The English Beat, the B-52s. Still the best live band I've ever seen was the B-52s, Talking Heads, and then the Police. And where this is going is when the Police played, they had one of their instrumentals playing over the PA.
Okay.
And Stuart Copeland walked out and he got behind the drums. He started playing along to it. And then Andy Summers came out. He started playing guitar. And then Steen comes out and he starts playing bass. And then they turned off the backing track and it's them playing the song. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. Like, they're nailing it. And it was fantastic.
Man.
It was absolutely amazing.
B-52s, and I tell anybody who's willing to listen, if you go see that band now, that's a great rock band.
Oh,
because of their drummer,
mm-hmm.
David Bowie's drummer, who I'm losing my mind because I can't remember his name right now.
Yeah.
Played with David for the last 10 years, 10 tours of his life.
Right.
And Tracy on bass from the Waitresses. But they're a great band. Great band.
Yeah. Well, I saw them when it was
the originals.
Dave Strickland on drums and Ricky Wilson was still alive playing guitar. It was the Whammy album. You know? And I remember them playing Big Bird and seeing Fred Steiner running around stage with his, bird arms and doing the whole thing. Yeah, that was what a great time that was,
Hey, Chris, on that New Wave Day at US Festival, because I'll pull this up every once in a while on YouTube and watch some stuff from that show. Missing Persons played.
That might have been the second year.
Okay.
There was 2 years, and I think the Straitjackets headlined it the first night, and then Van Halen headlined the second night. But the one I went to was actually the first year.
Okay. And
the second night was I don't remember all the bands, but I remember Tom Petty, Pat Benatar, the Kinks, the Cars. That was kind of like the headliners for the second night. The third night, I didn't give a rat's ass about. I don't know if you could say ass on this, but it was like the Grateful Dead and the hippie bands. I was 13. I didn't care about that stuff, nor do I smoke pot. So
right.
I was there for the first night and part of the second night. I got to see Ray Davies kick the promoter off stage because he was playing too long.
Bill Graham.
Yeah. Yeah. Ray Davies literally kicked him in the ass off the stage. Let us finish our set, which was amazing.
That show is that Kink show at Us Festival is a great listen on, which is on YouTube as well.
Yep.
And clean as a whistle too, if you're really into them. I'm roughly your age, Chris, so I'm a little bit older than you, but that was when I came up on the Kinks, and then I found their older stuff after that, right? You know, it's kind of like you with Wings, and then we're discovering Beatles.
Sure.
And, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
The show I saw, Wings,
Yep.
is the actual show. It's available on DVD. When they show that Wings Around the World or whatever. That's the show I was at. And I remember him opening with Venus and Mars and Rock Show. And I remember at 8 years old being disappointed because he didn't play any early Beatles. It was all later stuff, which is fine. But to me, I was, I wanted to hear I Saw Her Standing There, or
sure.
I was an early Beatles fan and still am. I love all the Beatles stuff, but I think to me they peaked at Rubber Soul at the latest. Actually, I think they peaked at Hard Day's Night, but
Chris,
I'll deal with everything else.
You know what?
John Lennon was on fire.
Yeah.
On Hard Day's Night. Those are most of his songs. That is the Beatles to me, is a Hard Day's Night. Like, I just recently, Tucker and I on tour, we were driving. We had a 4-hour drive, and I'm like, I'm going to play a Hard Day's Night, the English version, probably from start to finish. And it was just like, it's the best album ever made. Some people say Sgt. Pepper, Hard Day's Night.
They're all so good.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is that art is subjective discussion that you can have for hours and hours.
Absolutely.
But you know what? We're kindred spirits, because I remember when my dad brought home that Meet the Beatles, because I was a younger kid with older brothers and sisters, and we played the grooves out of that.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh my gosh. And it was the soundtrack of our childhood, right? And we never heard anything like that.
Yeah.
It was just mind-blowing. Yeah. Mind-blowing. Oh my gosh.
And being a band with Eddie Angel, who's a few years older than me, he got to see the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. He went down and bought I Want to Hold Your Hand on 45. Sure. And took the 45 home. I was not old enough to experience that. I got it secondhand. And I think today kids are still discovering the Beatles. They are the greatest band in history, bar none. It's not even debatable, in my opinion.
I agree with you. And you know what? Take it full circle back to Nick.
Yeah.
Think about people who don't know him, but didn't come up when we came up. Some of the songs that he put out, I liken them to the Beatles so much because they were, chorus, verse, chorus, bridge.
Yes.
Perfectly produced.
That
perfect
formula.
Vocals. All of that. He knew how to write a pop song with a hook.
Absolutely.
And that was the Beatles for me. Like those early Beatles songs, like Please Please Me.
Oh,
that's on my Mount Rushmore, a perfect song.
There's a song. It's funny you should say that. There's a song on the new record, Indoor Safari, and it's called Jetpack Boomerang. Song. So make note of that. And the last line of that song,
I know,
is, last night I said these words to my girl. That's from Please Please Me. That's the last line of the song. How cool is that?
I listened to that today, man. That is such a great pull. So fun.
Yeah. It's amazing how brilliant, and the sense of humor in it is, it's just so us. You know
who does that? We're going off the reservation, but U2 does that. Bono, people who get, I don't know, everybody has their opinion about U2. I think they're fabulous, and I think history will look better at them than current people do, because I think people got sick of them. They were so played. But oh my gosh, when you would see them live, and he would throw in Send in the Clowns, and he had the same kind of brains and wit that you guys have.
Yeah.
I love Straightjackets because you'll pull out an instrumental like the theme from Titanic or something like that, which it's so brilliant and funny and cheeky.
Well, you know what? It's like Nick says, it's like, funny or not funny. you know?
Yeah.
So you can have a game, you know,
Yeah.
what's funny in our bands, you know,
Yeah.
Van Halen funny, Bon Jovi not funny. You know, there's certain things.
Yes.
And it coincides with that. You know, you got to have a sense of humor in music, you know.
Oh yeah.
You really do.
I get you. You know, that Van Halen example is so perfect because hate them or love them, particularly the early Van Halen with David Lee Roth.
You know what? That's my guilty pleasure. I love Van Halen. I never got to see him live.
Me either.
I've seen a couple of really good tribute bands.
Yeah.
But I'm a huge David Lee Roth fan. And I'll tell you, Alex Van Halen is an amazing drummer. He's a really good swing drummer. He can do a swing beat better than 99% of the rockabilly bands out there.
Yeah,
those guys are great. And there was like Big Bad Bill with Sweet William Now, where their dad's playing clarinet or oboe on it.
Yeah.
It's like, that's fantastic. You know, there's bands out there right now that wish they could do that.
Oh my gosh. But with Roth, they were cheeky. You know, they didn't take themselves that seriously.
David Lee Roth was a big vaudeville fan.
Yeah.
You know, and if you've seen, there's shows in the Straitjackets. I don't know if you've seen it, because when we do it once in a while, I'll come out when Eddie does Itchy Chicken, and I'll do a dance. I'll do a tap dance or whatever. And that's just vaudeville. And the rubber chicken, the whole bit. That's just being funny, entertaining, you know, not taking yourself seriously.
Yep.
And that's the way we are, you know.
I want to ask you a question. Because I want to get to thank you, no thank you in a second. And throw some topics at you. What do you think? Because I preface this with, you joined the Straitjackets in 2012, right?
Yeah.
They'd been going a little bit before that. It was Danny Amos's band, right? Who founded it?
Well, it was Eddie and Danny's band.
Eddie and Danny.
Equally.
Okay. But you know, they had produced records prior to you, and then you've produced records since.
Yeah.
And if you could just in your head say, these were our, not just by success, but maybe our best 2 to 3 or 4 songs. It's terrible. It's like, what are my favorite kids? But
how long's your podcast, by the way?
Right.
Go on forever here.
Yeah.
So I was actually a huge fan of Los Straightjackets before I joined. My brother and I, we had a band called the Sprague Brothers, and we met those guys on their, like, I think it was their first tour promoting their first album. And my brother and I, who are the worst critics in the world, we are so stuck up. You know, we hated everything new. When we saw the Straitjackets with Eddie and Danny and Jimmy Lester and Scott Esbeck, man, we were blown away. I went the next day to Rhino Records in Santa Monica and bought their CDs. Huge fan. I mean, those first 2 records to me means so much to me. Pacifica, I mean, Wrong Planet. There's all these songs, Casbah, songs that we don't even do live or never even done live. I'm a huge fan of. But like, I remember my first gig with the Straitjackets playing Pacifica. It was like an outer body experience.
Oh, Chris.
I'm in the band. I'm actually playing Pacifica on drums right now. There's Eddie Angel, you know, there's Pete, there's Greg. I'm in the band. So I was a huge fan before I even joined the band.
Yeah, that was the song that came to mind when I asked you that question, because in my mind, as a fan, I put Pacifica up there with Walk Don't Run.
Oh, hell yeah.
With Walk Don't Run. It's that good an instrumental guitar song.
Well, you know what's funny is, like, when Eddie wrote that song, he told me, Eddie's wife, Melanie, who I'm really good friends with, she's a drummer.
Okay.
And when he wrote that song, it was like a 12/8, and she changed it to a surf beat. And then Jimmy, the drummer, played it like she would play it, you know, and now I'm playing it like he would play it or she would play it, you know. So hats off to Melanie Heron.
Well, that's a great story, because that anybody who's listening to this, go get that song, go download it.
Absolutely.
By Los Straightjackets.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's play Thank You, No Thank You.
Okay.
So I'm going to randomly pepper you with topics. And you, if you
Oh
don't want to
boy.
say anything,
Okay.
you say
Careful what you wish for.
right. That's right. You might just get it. So, all right. We'll chat about the thank yous and then leave the others behind. So, okay. Thank you. No, thank you, Dick Dale.
Thank you. Huge
Yeah.
fan of Dick Dale. I got to see him in the 80s with a full horn section during the surf revival in the Southern California, with him playing Mizzaloo, all the songs. And he did his first set at this venue he played, my brother and I there, and he came through the audience and I said, "Man, you got to play Take It Off." And he's like, "Oh yeah, no, 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 Take It Off. Oh yeah, we'll do it the next set." And he did it. So huge fan. And all the beach movies with Annette Funicello, all that stuff. He was in those, I think, a couple of the movies. So we were huge fans.
Awesome. My second one here, Chris, I've got, we would spend too much time on it because I know it's a thank you for you. And I know that
we'll have a part 2 soon.
No, it's the Ventures.
Oh, obviously. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, foundational, right?
Absolutely. And during the 80s, I was really good friends with Mel Taylor and Bob Bogle and Don Wilson. I used to go see him at the Palomino in North Hollywood. And I became really good friends with the drummer. I was probably 22 years old at the time. And his wife called me. This is the biggest heartache story of my life.
Oh.
I get a call from his wife on a Tuesday saying, "The Ventures have a gig Saturday night and Mel's really sick. Can you play drums with them?" I said, "Absolutely. Where is it?" "The Hollywood Bowl." I'm like, "I'm in. Let's do it." So
how old were you at the time?
I think I was 22, maybe 21. And I got a call Friday night from the wife saying, "You know what? Mel's better. He's going to go ahead and do the show, but thank you so much." And I hung up and I cried like a baby. Like I could have played drums with the Ventures. But later on, I ended up with Deke Dickerson playing drums with Noki Edwards, the lead guitar player. We had a band called Ventures Mania. We still do. I just live in upstate New York. He lives in LA, so it's hard for me to make the gigs.
Yep.
But we did many gigs with doing Venture songs with Noki Edwards on guitar before he passed away, and even did a record. If you want to research it, people, it's Ventures Mania. You can probably find it on iTunes. Yep. And I wrote a song on that record, and Noki got to play lead on it, and I was just pleased as punch. Got that. So
what a treat.
Yeah.
That's great.
As Harlan Williams would say, what a treat.
What a treat. All right. Thank you. No, thank you. Mick Avery.
I'm neutral.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
You can say no, thank you. All right.
Okay. No, thank you.
Were you a big Kings fan?
I am. I'm more of, yeah, I am a huge Nick. I am.
It's okay. No, I was just curious about that. Yeah. A lot of people love him. But then they when the boys got mad, they kicked him out, particularly Dave, and then they brought in Bob Henrit, was their later drummer. He was a great drummer.
I actually prefer Mick Avery, to be honest with you, but I know on a lot of those early recordings it's Bobby Elliott, the studio drummer, that played on that stuff.
Okay.
So, but no, I take that back. Thank you. I'm Mick
Got
Avery.
it. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. No, thank you. The Beau Brummels.
Thank you. I mean, I'm a huge fan of 60s music.
Yeah.
They obviously don't have as many hits as some of the other bands, but I do like the Beau Brummels.
Got it. This is an easy one, but I got to ask you about it. But thank you. No, thank you. Burt Bacharach / Hal David.
I don't care either way.
Really?
Yeah. No.
That's awesome.
One thing you'll understand about me, I live in a cave and I like what I like, and I'll research music, but not as much as people think.
Yeah.
I mean, the newest band to me right now is the Foo Fighters, and they're 30 years old. So
yeah. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, thank you. Strawberry Alarm Clock.
I'll say thank you because me and my brother, the Sprague brothers, opened for Strawberry Alarm Clock at the Palomino. And we were on the same booking agency at the time. And they were the super sweetest guys in the world.
Wow.
So a big thank you to them. And if you've seen the movie Valley of the Dolls, the 13-year-old redheaded guitar player in that movie
Yeah.
is the guitar player from Wingo Wingo.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I know
Yeah.
that there's a whole big connection between them and Danny Elfman and Oingo
Yes.
Boingo. And yeah,
Yes. The
got
guitar
it.
player was in both bands.
I just read that Roger Ebert loved them so much that his wife, when Roger died, had the alarm clock play at his celebration.
That's weird.
Isn't that weird?
That's weird.
Incense and peppermints. All
Okay.
right. Yeah, it's a great song. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next.
No, thank you.
Yep.
David Bowie.
Thank you.
Okay.
I love David Bowie. Absolutely. Rebel Rebel. David Bowie played all the instruments on, so how can you go wrong?
Wow.
Pure
All right.
artist. Yeah, icon.
Thank you. No, thank you. The Smithereens.
Big freaking thank you. Big fan of the Smithereens. My dream is actually to play guitar and sing in that band.
You need to talk to Marshall.
He's out. I'm better. I can do better than that.
No, I know, but what I meant was he can make that happen for you, Chris.
Well, he's the singer in that band, so we'll have to get rid of him first. But I'm a huge Smithereens fan. My band, The Out of Sights, which I play guitar and sing in, we're very similar with that. Very power pop 60s. I would love that gig.
Oh,
so anybody listening out there with a connection to Smithereens, get me in.
All right. Thank you. No, thank you. Blondie.
Big thank you. Can you give me something a little harder, please?
Okay. Coming up. Thank you. No, thank you. This isn't hard because
come on.
We covered a lot of these already.
Sponsored by Viagra, apparently.
Okay. Here we go. Thank you. No, thank you. Prog rock.
Prog rock?
Yep.
No, thank you.
All right.
Except Genesis Wind and Wuthering album. Other than that, no, thank you.
All right. Let me take
I love
you down.
Phil Collins drumming, by the way, which is actually he plays Noble and Cooley drums like I do. So
what about
mixed thank you on that one?
Okay. What about thank you, no thank you? Yes.
No, thank you.
Not even Alan White, who played with John Lennon.
Like I said, man, it's I go with feel and you know.
No, I get you.
They have a couple good songs, fine, okay. But I wouldn't want to play with them.
Okay. I know what you're going to say.
Or go to a show. I would be bored.
Pardon me?
I would be bored at their show.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. No, thank you. The Ramones.
Oh, thank you. I love the Ramones. One of my earliest memories of listening to FM radio in LA at K-Rock 106.7 in 1981 was my favorite song, We Want the Airwaves.
Yes.
Which apparently they hated because there was lead guitar overdubbed on that, which if you listen to Ramones, there's no lead guitar on any of their songs. And that one has lead guitar on it. So that was one of my favorite songs of all time. I would actually sleep with the radio next to my pillow. And at 3 a.m, if that song came on, I would wake up to hear it.
Chris, I love that song. I found a live version of that song that they sang on Tom Snyder's Tomorrow Show.
Oh, I love that show.
All right, I'm going to send you the link. It's brilliant. And, guitar overdub or not, they killed it.
They did. That's a brilliant song. That is such a great song.
I'm surprised nobody's.
And that was one of the bands that played at the US Festival.
Okay.
With the Ramones. And I remember Joey Ramone.
Joey.
Holding up the baseball bat and singing Beat on a Brat.
Oh,
with the baseball bat.
Well, and speaking of them, how
about Rock and Roll High School with PJ Souls?
Yeah, how about it?
How about that? Heartthrob.
Yes. Because I'm thinking about their drummers.
Yeah.
Tommy, Marky, Richie, and then Marky again, and Clem, who sat in for a cup of coffee with them one time, Clem Berg, That's amazing band. Okay. So last thank you, no thank you. And I know how this is going to go, but I wanted to talk to you about it is Ringo Starr's All-Star Band.
No, thank you.
Really? Why?
Glorified bar band.
Oh, I disagree.
Really? You disagree with this?
I
That's it.
do.
We're done.
No. I do, and here's why. Um, pick an artist that
Look,
sat in on that band.
number one, I hate Toto.
Oh no. Yeah, put them to the side.
Why is the guy from Toto in Ringo Starr's All-Star Band?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Steve Lucas.
You know how many people should be in that band right now? In Ringo Starr's All-Star Band?
4.
It's like, seriously, man, like, come on. That is so square.
Well, here's what I like about it. I liked when Jack Bruce was in that band, and when they covered Cream songs, they did them beautify're what I like about them, because I think you're a little hard on them as a bar band, because they're
not a bar band. They're just really cheesy. Like I go back to the point of chemistry.
Yep.
Like, honestly, like Ringo could get so many great people.
Yeah.
And the ones he gets, number one, he's not really playing drums very much during the whole show. And
True.
I get it out of front it, but really, you're going to have the guy from fucking, excuse my language, Toto in the band.
Yeah.
Seriously.
No, I get it.
Why not have Clem Burke play with Ringo?
I agree with that.
There's so many amazing people out there that could be in this band. And I'm sorry. That's just my personal opinion.
No. I think if you saw some of them, because he's trotted out different versions of it, right? So one of them he had Burton Cummings in one of them, and he had Todd Rundgren in one of them, and he had Frampton in one of them. All really good writers and singers and songwriters. So I give him his due for that. But
you know what? I will forever see Ringo.
Yeah,
rocking behind the drums at the Washington D.C. concert in '64, where the drums are almost falling over. And for people out there who have not seen this, just Google on YouTube the Beatles in DC in '64 and watch Ringo play. And then watch him now. It's like, it's fine.
He can still swing.
You know what? I'm stuck up, and I know what I like.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see Ringo going down this path.
Yeah. I get you.
That's it. I'm glad you mentioned that, though, because I can finally disagree with you.
Yep. You got a good vent in there. What do you think about It Don't Come Easy and Photograph?
Oh, It Don't Come Easy was one of the first songs I remember hearing when I was 3 years old.
Yeah.
That song and Midnight at the Oasis were the first two songs that I remember hearing on the radio when I was 3 years old.
I believe them. Yeah, I believe that.
Maria Muldaur.
Totally.
Here's a great story. So my brother and I, we had the Sprague brothers.
Yep.
In the late 80s, early 90s, we had this booking agent. I won't name him by name.
Okay.
But he lived in the San Fernando Valley in California. He had a double-decker English bus. And we went over to his, that was his office. So we went over there, and he was managing Eric Burden from the Animals, Robbie Krieger from the Doors, Strawberry Alarm Clock, and Maria Muldaur. And we go into his bus for a band meeting, a booking agent, and he pushes his voicemails, the machine. Remember those days?
Yep.
There was a cassette. And one of the messages was from Maria Muldaur. She was in Germany. And his first name was Jeff. I'll give that away. And the message went, click, Jeff, it's Maria. I'm in Germany and I'm starving. Click, turned it off. This is a childhood idol for me. Like Midnight at the Oasis.
Yeah.
And she's leaving a voicemail on his machine. I have no money. I need money sent to me in Germany. This is, late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
So I have mixed feelings for Maria Muldaur as a rock goddess and also a starving musician.
That totally get it. So when you're sitting behind the kit and Nick says, that old clock on the wall.
Yes.
So
it's ticking right there. I can see it.
you can
Right.
see it.
Yes.
So, and that's the greatest part where he says, you all have to go home.
Yes.
And the
Well,
crowd
thank
all
you for
booed.
having me, man. This has been a lot of fun.
Well, I love it, Chris. The pleasure is all mine. So this has been great. So, and I always say you'll never get these 60 minutes back. And for that, I apologize.
That's true.
But thank you. Can you stick around for 1 second?
Absolutely.
And we'll end the show with a few disclaimers and thank yous.
But
And
which,
so
by the way, you don't notice, but I'm not wearing pants. But go ahead.
Oh, really? Okay.
You can't see, but it's all right. That's my
all right. As long as everything's hanging in the right direction, we're all
it's all hanging left.
Okay, good. Good. So first, disclaimers.
Yes.
And I Thank You show is now available over the counter. All right. And I Thank You show can also be viewed on the Margaret Dumont Network. Check your local listings. And I Thank You show is not approved for minors, both underage and coal minors. And now for something completely different, a genuine thank you to you, Chris Sprague.
Thank you.
And my show, love your music and appreciate your time to talk. And I want to talk about your bands too. We ran out of time, damn it.
It's all right. Next time. We'll do it again.
Next time. For you kids out there, please see the show notes because I'm going to put a bunch of links and clips for everywhere that you can find Chris's music, including every band Chris fronts, backs, and middles. This includes live appearances for the Sound Minds and the Out of Sights, and for Nick Lowe and Los Straightjackets, where you are encouraged to go see them, shut up and listen,
Please
and then cheer, and then buy merch, and then leave in an orderly fashion. Was that good, Chris?
That's perfect.
Instructions?
Yep.
Okay, good. Excellent. Okay. So, And I Thank You show is a production of Arthur Street Weirdos. It's written by yours truly. Theme music is by Royalty Free. Brand creative is by my friend Brad Lutz. If you're consuming this product via Apple Podcasts or Spotify or the like, please rate and review it. 5 stars is nice, and frankly, it's the least you can do. If you're watching on the YouTubes, please subscribe and give us a thumbs up. All of this will help people find us so they can waste their valuable time. Comments can be shared at andithankyou@gmail.com. Thanks a lot for listening and watching, and I thank you. Chris, it's been a blast.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, man. Appreciate it.
You got it. I'm going to say goodbye.